Recording in progress. Ah, so, welcome to the first of the 6 series webinar to kick off the new menopause focus for hot and healthy podcast, for example. What did you do?
Right.
All right, I'm going to start that again because you're cheeky. All right, no one's okay, so no one's trying to jump in, so that's fine. I'll do it again. So welcome to the first in a 6-part series to kick off the new version of the Hot and Healthy podcast, which is now called the Hot and Healthy Menopause podcast. I'm Nicole Van Haddam, the host of the Hot and Healthy Menopause podcast. And with me for the next 6 sessions is the amazing Rochelle Wade, and I'll get her to introduce herself to you. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and if you've got any suggestions or comments, please put it below wherever you're seeing this video right now, and we will be watching and engaging with those questions, so please do send them through. So Rochelle, a little bit about you.
Well, I am a naturopath that has had a long journey, I guess, in the fields of immunology and women's health medicine and reproductive medicine. And now I find myself, let's face it, heading towards that midlife thing. And I'm seeing a lot of women that need help. And the good news is it doesn't have to be hard. And so that's the word that I'm spreading.
Oh gosh, I wish someone had told me that a bunch of years ago. So first of all, I'm just going to be a good girlfriend to Rochelle and call her out on something, and that is that she's not very good at saying how amazing she is. So that is my job as her girlfriend. She has 3 master's degrees. She's also studying postgraduate law as well. Amazing. And the way I introduce you to people that have never met you is that, you know, you're Australia's highest qualified immunology and women's health naturopath. Is that correct?
Oh, potentially.
Oh, well, I'm going to post your bio below this, and I'm going to post a link to your website so people can check it out, because one of the things that women aren't particularly good at, and for various reasons, which isn't the purpose of this particular podcast episode, we're not good at saying how great we are. And I think we really need to, kick each other on it. And I'm going to say how great I am. So for those who haven't met me before, I'm a TEDx speaker, a 3 times best-selling author. I've been running the Hot and Healthy podcast since 2014. I have helped literally tens of thousands of women and a few men improve their health and well-being in a holistic way. I'm a certified integrative nutrition health coach, and I'm super passionate about the menopause transition. I'm 54 at the time of this recording. And one of the reasons that I now specialize in the menopause transition is because there was no one to guide me through this. And in fact, women that were older than me were dissing on me, saying, oh, you think you're the only person who's gone through this, just kind of suck it up and put up with it. And I'm like, no, women shouldn't be suffering in silence. We should be getting together as women and going, how can I help you? What do you need to know? This is going to be a 10-year potential transition through perimenopause, early stages to late stages to menopause to postmenopause. And you are changing on so many levels, of which this 6-part series is the beginning of raising awareness, having those honest conversations, and being there for each other. How about you, Rochelle? What do you see other older women who've maybe gone through this journey? What do you see them doing to the women coming through behind them?
Look, I think we really have to break through, which is thousands of years of misogyny as well. Because our aunties and our mothers and our grandparents suffered through this doesn't mean to say we should. And there's absolutely no reason that we should. And I think I can feel the tide changing. I don't know about you, but there's more out there now. We should all ride this wave. We should all be really vocal and tell all our friends, our sisters, our daughters, even if they are 12, that we shouldn't take for granted what people tell us. even if it
No.
comes from a good place.
Right. And there is a big gap in the conversation around a woman's reproductive life cycle and life cycle in general. Like when I was younger, you didn't talk about periods. And then there was this whole stage where people were talking about periods. And then, people weren't really talking about sex and intimacy and reproduction at that stage. Well, now there's so many resources out there, and they weren't talking about postpartum depression and then what happens as, you go through those reproductive years. And then no one was talking about menopause. Now they are, and there's lots of books and there's podcasts, there's this, there's webinars, there's incredible groups on Facebook. And I can also see that there will be lots of offline offerings as well. Hold on a second, I'm going to cough. I don't think that's a symptom of menopause, although there are 70 potential symptoms of menopause. And the more research we do around it, the more we're realizing how much of what's happening to a woman's body is connected to the hormone changes, the restructuring of the brain, not just what's happening with our reproductive areas, but what's happening in the brain as well. And so today we're just going to sort of take a nice bite out of this, or should I say a nice sip out of this, and talk about one of our potentially favorite beverages, which may be having a negative impact, or as Rochelle liked to remind me before we started recording, a possible benefit as we go through the transition in the perimenopause to menopause. So we're gonna get started, because I know that we only have about 14 minutes for this episode, and I want to make sure that we get the most out of it. So I'm going to bring on the PowerPoint slides. So for those who are listening to the audio version of this, if you go to the YouTube channel or to NicoleVanHaddam.com, you'll be able to watch the slides as we present them on the screen as well. Great. So just to make sure you're in the right webinar and watching the right episode, we are talking about caffeine and hot flashes. Friend or foe caffeine? Which side of the fence are you sitting on, Rochelle? Friend or foe?
That entirely depends on the person. For me, friend, maybe for you, foe.
Okay, well, I'm on the foe side because it's a personal perspective, and I'm open to all perspectives, which is one of the reasons that we're having tonight's conversation. All right, so just to give you an overview of what we're going to cover in today's session. Understanding hot flashes. What are they? What's actually happening in our body? Why are we experiencing them? Why do some people not experience them? Caffeine in the body, the science behind it. Does caffeine affect everyone the same way? Practical tips for managing caffeine intake to reduce your hot flashes, and any other lifestyle tips that we can bring to you to manage those hot flashes. So we've got some surprises there as well. Now let's talk about understanding hot flashes. What are hot flashes, Rochelle? Tell us the overview, symptoms, frequency, and causes.
During perimenopause particularly, but also into menopause, we have this fluctuation of estrogen. So where progesterone just kind of gradually decreases, estrogen can go crazy, high, low, and it can happen, throughout the day rather than cyclical over a month, a bit like during puberty, which is why we see crazy teenagers. Now, the effect of this is that it can disrupt our central body thermostat, which happens in a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. And estrogen is kind of protective of that mechanism as we go through life. So as estrogen decreases, the hypothalamus, or your temperature thermostat, becomes more sensitive. So it misinterprets, small changes in temperature that we have externally, and it triggers a hot flash.
Okay, so for those who may not be aware of those terms, hypothalamus, estrogen, progesterone, etc., can you just give us a real, for dummies version for this episode?
Yeah. Well, literally, the hypothalamus is just the region in the brain that controls our temperature. Estrogen and progesterone are hormones that are made in our ovaries, and they have many, many, many different roles. We usually associate them with fertility, in fact, both of them are also made by other areas of the body as well. So we continue to have estrogen and progesterone throughout our entire life. It's just a matter of amounts. But the problems that we associate with perimenopausal and menopausal symptoms are due because of the decline in the production of these hormones by the ovaries. The ovaries are wanting to retire.
Aren't we all? No, I'm just ramping up, but in a different way.
Exactly right.
Um,
20.
so, okay, so that makes sense. Like for my own experiences of hot flashes, they have changed a little bit in how I've been experiencing them. I used to sit there watching my girlfriends who might be a little older than me, and they'd be sitting there at coffee or at dinner, and they would literally have sweat running down their face, and they'd be dabbing, and it was like it was literally like they were raining, and I was looking at them going, this is fascinating and slightly disconcerting, because I guess that's going to happen to me. And it was in air conditioning, it was outside in normal temperatures, it was anything and everything, and there seemed to be no rhyme or reason to it. So when it started happening to me, I had at least some idea, oh, there's nothing actually wrong with me, I'm just shifting. But the hot flash itself would start around my waist and come up and kind of bloom in my face, and then I'd start sweating. And then over time, I could feel it in my ovaries. And that area around my abdomen started to get really hot, and I'd be like, oh, here it comes. And then I would feel it traveling up my torso into my neck and into my face. So I had a little bit of warning. But that took many years for that kind of evolution. And now it's really just around my neck and face area. Is it normal or is it not normal? But I mean, I guess everyone is going to experience their hot flashes in a different way.
Everyone does. And I have to say, there's a fabulous reel kicking around that I've posted, and I'll share with your group, of a woman, a bald woman, like her head's been shaven, sitting outside watching a football match, obviously in a very cold environment, with steam coming off her head. I mean, it's quite amazing.
I know, and that's
Amazing.
exactly how it feels.
Yep.
It's crazy, and it can happen. Like, is it different to night sweats?
No, night sweats are a hot flash that happen at night.
Oh, okay.
But
So that's the only difference.
because we're under covers or whatever, we just don't
Oh,
realize it. Interestingly enough, when I said that, your body misinterprets, or your brain misinterprets, small changes in temperature, those triggers can be things like spicy foods and alcohol and caffeine. So for people that are sensitive and have that sensitivity in temperature regulation, that's where the caffeine comes in. The caffeine doesn't itself cause the hot flashes, but it makes them worse, potentially.
okay. All right. So that comes to the other common triggers for hot flashes. So let's talk about stress. How does stress exacerbate or make our hot flashes worse?
Stress does the same thing. When the effect of, say, caffeine on the body is very closely related to the effect of stress on the body. If we go from caffeine first, just to make it's a bit of a story, caffeine blocks some things in the brain. For those that are nerds like me, it blocks the adenosine receptors, and that prevents your brain from slowing down, basically. Say at the end of the day, which is why people can't sleep. So it makes you alert, maybe a bit jittery. When that happens, that causes a release of adrenaline, which is our fight or flight sort of hormone, and our long-term stress hormone, cortisol. So it's the release of cortisol and adrenaline, so our stress hormones, that also increase our heart rate and raise our blood pressure and all those other things that make the body more sensitive to the temperature changes. So all of these things are totally interlinked. So stress can trigger it, caffeine can trigger it, alcohol can trigger it, but of course alcohol and caffeine cause the stress that then cause the sensitivity to the temperature change.
Right. Okay.
If that makes sense.
I can see us doing just on alcohol and its impact on
Oh,
women's
Absolutely. Now, just to give you an idea of how much, say, caffeine does affect a hot flash, I do have references for those people that may not believe me. A study found that caffeine consumption actually can increase the intensity of a hot flash by like 50%. So it's significant in some people. But the other thing that's significant, that sometimes it doesn't affect it at all. It depends on the person, and we can go into why that is later.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Absolutely. Okay. So I shared this particular image in my community group on Facebook called Women in Midlife and Menopause. And there were so many people commenting and going, yep, that's me. That's me. So tell us a little bit about why do we end up, for those people who can't see what's on the screen, go to the YouTube or my website and check it out. But it's a coffee cup and it's got lines across it. The top line is, the top of the cup where the cup's still full of coffee, and it has a line with the words shh. And then the next line down, it says almost. Next line down, it says, now you may speak. And the final line is, never mind, I have to go poop now. Why does coffee have that effect on our digestive system?
On our digestive system.
Yeah.
Okay. Caffeine can be, this is where it gets really nuanced. Caffeine is in itself relaxing, and it relaxes the muscles in the bowel, but it also is excitatory. So it excites the action of the actual pushing of the food through the bowel as well.
Right.
Now, you don't necessarily think of caffeine as being relaxing, but that's because it's actually really complex. Just as some people, most people drink caffeine and they get perked up a little bit. Some people actually report feeling tired after drinking caffeine.
Mm.
And here's a bit of a hint. It has to do with how quickly your body processes the caffeine.
So it's the caffeine, not the coffee itself?
No, it's the caffeine.
Okay. So if you're drinking decaf, you shouldn't have those problems?
No.
Great, because that's what I'm drinking right now, which we'll talk about soon. But what I found interesting about sharing this particular post in that group was the volumes of people who were like, absolutely can't do without my coffee, don't want to speak to anybody till I've had my coffee. Coffee is the thing, they have one coffee to get their day started, and then they'll have a couple more during the day, et cetera, et cetera. I guess we'll get to it, but one of the things I want to find out is, should we be reducing the amount of caffeinated coffee that we have as we move through this phase, or is it really bio-individual and it's a, individual case?
Well, it is individualized a fair bit. Overall, I would say the majority of people should decrease their caffeine intake a little bit. But once again, it depends, because there are pros to caffeine consumption.
Okay, great. Well, we'll get into that.
Yep.
Let's talk about the science behind caffeine and its impact on the body. We've already talked about a couple of things just here. But let's talk about specifically its effect on the central nervous system and metabolism.
Okay. Okay, so we've said that it can make people anxious and jittery. So it does affect the central nervous system. It's such a long, complex sort of thing. Help me out here.
Yeah. Well, like, how do we break it down? What's the complex part that you want to make simpler? We'll keep it in terms of women's transition through perimenopause to menopause.
Yep. We have so many hormonal fluctuations going on, right from up here, the neurotransmitters, our happy hormones, our awake hormones, our hunger hormones, all of that gets affected. Then we come down to the sensitivity of our body to react to things like our stress hormones and sugar levels and things like that. I guess with respect to the central nervous system and caffeine, the biggest one is the hypothalamus. It is the temperature regulation. That is the biggest one for most people. It also messes with our ability to relax, which is why there's a lot of anxiety during perimenopause as well. It also affects our ability to, well, that increase in stress causes our liver to release sugar. So we get the sugar crashes, and even if we're not eating sugar.
Interesting.
So that's why, and then, I mean, and that causes sugar cravings as well, because I mean, if you go into a slump, the first thing we do is reach for, you know, coffee and chocolate, normally 2 p.m. every Australian workplace, or every worldwide workplace. In perimenopause, because of decreasing estrogen, we do become less sensitive to the ability to handle these things anyway. So any extra stress that we put on the body is going to make everything worse. And that's where caffeine becomes a big disruptor for people that are already struggling with these sorts of things. Now, there is a very big genetic component to this. And it's possible to have a DNA test and actually determine whether you are a fast or a slow metabolizer of caffeine. And that will determine whether you get excited by coffee, whether you feel sleepy with coffee, whether you get exacerbation of hot flashes by coffee, all the things. Genetics is key. So that's why necessarily, and I know it's really difficult for people out there, that typing hot flashes and caffeine, for instance, in Google and just getting a stock standard response from your nearest $69 program may not be appropriate for everyone, because all of these things are incredibly complex, I've got to tell you, but very nuanced as well.
So I guess people can do their own personal experiment. Just
absolutely.
Coffee it out for 3 days, let it leave your system, have it at 8 o'clock in the morning, see when you start to have a crash or a change or a jitter or whatever. Have one at lunchtime, see how long it lasts in the system. And I guess it is the metabolizing of the caffeine that is changing whether or not it's going to keep you awake, whether you're going to have that afternoon crash, whether you're going to have the anxiety or the heart palpitations.
I do think that by the time we get, because women are wise, and in fact, we didn't say it earlier, but Eastern cultures actually see menopause as a good thing, and it's the age of wisdom.
I love it.
Trying to change that here. But you know right now how caffeine affects you. You may not have thought of it in terms of hot flashes, but don't just think of caffeine in terms of temperature regulation, because it's possible to not have hot flashes but get anxiety, or you can get hot flashes but no anxiety, or you can get them both, or you can get none at all.
Right. And of course, coffee isn't the only place we get caffeine. We can get it from chocolate, we can get it from teas, we can get it from, where else would we get caffeine from?
All those drinks, the Red Bulls, and
yes, oh my gosh.
Not mention brand names necessarily, but all those things that give you wings.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's interesting though. For instance, the other thing that you can play around with is if you just like the taste of coffee, you can go decaf. That's one thing. If you think you need a bit of caffeine, try green tea. Because apart from the fact that green tea has been had for thousands of years in cultures that actually had lived quite long, in comparison to Western cultures until recently. But green tea also has some other things in it, L-theanine for one, that actually is a relaxing substance. So that can actually mitigate some of the angsty bits of caffeine, even though you're getting the caffeine still.
Yeah, which is so important, because I guess one of my major issues to do with my menopause transition has been around anxiety. And we'll do a whole episode on anxiety and why that can increase during this transition time and what to do about it. So for me, I've been completely off the caffeine for 2 months, and it's the most significant thing I've experienced is heart palpitations reduced. I really
Yeah.
didn't think it was doing all that much for me, and I had anxiety anyway, so I just put the two together as a combo, and they're not. My heart palpitations were significantly exacerbated by the cups of coffee I was having first thing in the morning, and any other caffeine sources. For me, it would have been dark chocolate throughout the rest of the day. And
Yeah.
I couldn't quite get clear on how it was impacting me until I got clean of it for a full month and then looked back and went, oh yeah, that was a really good choice to get off that. And
Yeah.
but I like the taste of coffee. So for that month, and then when I realized it's a permanent thing, I then went and invested in some organic, good quality, decaffeinated coffee, and I take it with me everywhere. With the exception of, I still like to go out and drink coffee in coffee shops. I get the decaf, but obviously it's not organic. So it has all the chemical decaffeination, which is not great. But I offset that with the fact that I'm really loving being in a coffee shop. Swings and roundabouts.
When I, go to list the pros and cons, that's actually a really big pro, is actually the socialization and the social nature of coffee.
Mm. It's a big ritual for me. I have several coffee shops here in Australia and in Thailand. They know me by name. They look forward to me. I look forward to them. I know, half of them who's married to who and who's got what kids and what's going on in their lives. And I love it. That social interaction is really important to me. And I will invest like $7 going to a coffee shop and sitting there and journaling and, connecting with the community in that way. I really love it. And it's a daily must have. It's in my budget as a daily must have. Unfortunately, I'm having the chemical decaffeinated coffee, which is a bit of a bummer. But everywhere else, I take my organic decaf with me to other people's houses and stuff like that. So they don't have to accommodate that need of mine.
The other thing is, don't sweat the small stuff too much.
Yeah.
You're doing really well, and that works. We tend to get caught in this whirlpool of guilt and negativity, I guess, and the occasional cup of decaffeinated, maybe not that chemically treated,
Maybe
may,
not, maybe not.
may not be as bad. And, the fact that you're doing good things for your liver, which has to deal with all these chemicals, whether they be hormones, whether they've been caffeine or the chemicals that they treat the caffeine with. If you're treating your liver nicely in other ways, like eating beautiful green foods and things like that, your body's not going to worry about it at all. So,
I just thought of another topic. We can talk about the liver and how it processes all these hormone shifts as well, the impact.
it never ends. We could do.
We could be doing this for the next 10 years. Okay, let's talk about adrenaline. How does caffeine impact adrenaline?
It causes the release of adrenaline, which is why it makes us angsty.
Okay, so that's the feeling wired, but I'm also
Yep.
tired. And
It's our fight or flight hormone. So what that actually does, apart from making us alert so that we can run away from the saber-toothed tiger, I'm not entirely sure saber-toothed tigers existed at the same time as men, but let's not ruin a good story. But what it also does is it makes your liver pump out stored sugar, or stored glycogen, it's called, so that your muscles get the energy to run away from said tiger. And then, of course, that messes with our blood sugar roller coaster, and then we get the blood sugar dumping and feeling tired, and then it starts it all up again. It's good because then you go for another cup of coffee and you start it all over again. So if you suffer from that sort of thing, it's actually really good to get off it for a while and get off, if you can at the same time read headache, but it doesn't have to be that way, I've got to tell you, but modifying your sugar consumption too, so that you get off those blood sugar roller coasters. Because if that's all under control, the effect of adrenaline and caffeine isn't as much.
Got it.
And
Got
then
it.
your hot flashes won't be as much. Like, we can take a really holistic view of nothing works by itself here. It all talks to every other part of your body.
Yeah, everything's connected. Everything's connected. Great.
Which would, that means every small positive step you make is a positive thing for your body,
Right.
for
Yeah,
your entire body, not just for one thing. So that's how we can initiate lots of small little changes to snowball into really big effects.
absolutely. And you don't have to make all these changes overnight. You can do it gradually.
No, yeah,
I was on and off the caffeine and I was umming and ahhing, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to have to make a decision and just exclude it for a month. And
yeah.
also see what would happen with bowel motility. So, bowel eliminations to see if that would change anxiety. I was curious about, it's more about curious. It's not punishing or I'm bad.
It's
It's just like,
about
I'm really
curiosity.
curious what will
Yep,
happen in my body if I eliminated this one thing, which has
yep.
been so persistent in my life for such a long time. What if I just removed it for a while? How would I feel after that?
What I'd also like to say, another thing that's really, really simple and something that people struggle with too, whether you're drinking coffee or deciding to give it up, both things, get up in the morning and have a glass of water first. You've been sleeping for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 hours, depending on what stage you're in. But you've been dehydrating yourself over that time. So starting with a glass of water can absolutely make a huge difference. Now, coffee itself is dehydrating, even if you have water in it. So just giving your body half a fighting chance, basically.
Especially with, I mean, if you're having night sweats as well, you're dehydrating more than you would normally.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah,
Absolutely.
first thing that goes
And
into your body should be something that cleanses and begins to hydrate.
yeah, hydration is a huge key to wellness during perimenopause. I think that's got a lot to do with the way our society has kind of traveled with respect to how we eat and drink. You would be surprised, and absolutely no judgment, I'll put that out here, but you'd be surprised the number of people that I speak to that only drink coffee and wine and nothing else. Which is good in a sense. I throw in a couple of glasses of water a day and it totally changes their life. Hydration is key. And it's a really simple thing to do.
It is. And you don't just have to drink water. You can just focus on having more water-filled foods, soups, stews, vegetables, fruits. That all helps to hydrate the body as well. But during
Even weaker coffee.
weaker coffee, yeah, that makes sense. Weaker tea.
Go from a double shot to a single shot, maybe.
Yeah, great idea.
Hmm.
Great idea. Okay, so we have already covered some of the bioindividuality aspects of why caffeine affects some women more than others. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Apart from the genetics, I mean, it all comes down to genetics, but there are some people that will suffer more from hot flashes because the receptors in their brain are just more sensitive.
And
Uh,
how would they know that in advance? Would they just simply be experiencing it differently and they just need to be aware that they're that person? Or is there a way to know in advance? How do we prepare for that if it's something that is going to impact us?
I think, yeah, I don't know that there's any way that you can prepare unless you're really, really in tune with your body. Uh, People that get affected very quickly by caffeine, prior to perimenopause, may see more of a difference when their hormones lower, potentially. But that doesn't mean to say that because you have this sensitivity, there's nothing you can do about it. It just means that you're more likely to start having hot flashes maybe earlier too. And you need to jump on board with some steps to mitigate them, I guess. Lots of things that we can do to help.
Right. So getting to know your body is really important. I wish I had been tracking mine a little bit more systematically as I was moving through my 40s. I think some of the confusion and the fear and the symptom chasing would have been easier for me to advocate on my behalf through the medical system if I had some kind of track.
Yep.
And I didn't have that. And so that's something that's really important to me is when I coach people through is like, let's get in tune with your body. Let's see where all the interconnectedness is, because yes, there might be something going on that isn't related to perimenopause, menopause transition, or it might just be that, you know, us beautiful, complex, really, really fascinating women that we are, getting to know yourself is such an adventure and it's such an advantage because we can be distracted from ourselves for decades, taking care of other people's needs, building careers, doing all things we need to do. And then suddenly we've got a symptom which has got our attention, but maybe it's been quietly saying hello for a long time and we've just kind of been batting it away. And for me, I did actually have a bit of a midlife crisis and then sit back and go, yeah, there's a lot of things that kind of make sense now that I know what is happening, rather than just think, like letting my mind begin to, I don't know, dramatize or catastrophize. This means this, which means something else. Well, actually, no, this is a normal part of aging. And there can be a lot of calmness and a lot of assurance that things are just naturally going to flow into different stages and you need to deal with them, but you don't need to panic. I think a lot of panic can be alleviated when we are very much in tune with our own bodies and we take the time to map out the progression as we go through it.
I think also, I think that perimenopause and you know, the early, well, all of menopause really, it's never too late, but it's an amazing time because our body does actually reset. So a lot of, as you were saying, a lot of the things that we associate with perimenopause, and like we've been told perimenopause can last 10 or 15 years, but in reality, a lot of the things that are happening to cause the symptoms during perimenopause, which are surely exacerbated over that time, but they actually start from puberty. So at perimenopause, it's a time where we can actually really grab hold of the potential for our futures, because all of this is manageable. I'm telling you, there is nothing that is not manageable. Our body is amazing with its ability to heal itself and get where it needs to be.
Agreed.
And we need to embrace it big time. And that's what we do as a community.
Yeah.
As a community.
And that's the thing. I mean, when we started the webinar, it was about me being so frustrated that the women who's been through this before were just telling me to shut up and suck up and you know, stop being a drama queen. And I'm like, no, this isn't okay. This was not okay for you. And I'm not going to allow any woman coming up behind me to suffer through this without support and understanding and some peace of mind. And yes, our bodies are incredible and they're amazing, but we need to be in tune with that. We need to have a little bit of time to stop and pay attention to what's going on and to give ourselves the support and ask for the support around us as we go through it, because we are changing quite significantly. I'm certainly not the person I was just a few years ago. And okay, there are the looks and looking in the mirror and seeing different parts of my body showing up differently.
In different places.
Different places, that's right, different shapes, and it's not responding to the treatment that I've given it before and that sort of thing. But it's really about what's going on in my mind and very much also around what's going on in my role in society and how I identify my value and worth in society based on society's indoctrination of me as a female. And as a female, a white female in Australia specifically, having to sort of re-identify with my place in the world and my value. So there's a lot going on through this transition.
Oh, absolutely. Mm.
A lot of people are being medicated through it rather than educated through it. And that's partially why we're doing what we're doing. We want to educate them through it, not medicate them through it. Sometimes you need medication. I'm all for it. And I'm all for education along the way. Yeah.
And I'm all for educating the people that educate. like doctors.
Yeah.
Yeah. The good thing is that there are lots of little, extra things we need to think about during perimenopause, but actually all the things that we need to do to help right ourselves are good for everyone as well. So if you are taking this journey and you actually still have kids and family, because a lot of women are having children later in life, you can do all these tips for yourself, but you can do them for your family as well, except maybe hormone replacement therapy and things like that, but that's a whole other.
But knowing the impact of caffeine on your body is a great one for the whole family, not just for the
Absolutely.
perimenopause.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about managing caffeine intake. We've given a little snippets through the conversation so far, but let's get a little bit specific. How do we reduce it gradually without symptoms?
And that's exactly what you need to do. If you think that caffeine is an issue for you, and even maybe if you don't, because you may not be yet as in tune as you might need to be, if you suspect caffeine's making your hot flashes worse, I want you to reduce gradually. Do what I said before, maybe go from a double shot to a single shot, or cut down, if you're having 6 cups of coffee a day, don't laugh, try cutting back. We want to avoid withdrawal symptoms. We don't want withdrawal symptoms, because what do withdrawal symptoms do? They cause more stress on your body, which is more likely to give you a hot flash. So what's happening then is you're taking away caffeine, but your hot flashes are getting worse, and you think, well, it's not the caffeine.
Okay, right.
What I suggest is people actually keep it, not for life, just for a small, a week maybe. Track when you're consuming your caffeine and actually physically write down whether you're having hot flashes, whether you're having mood changes, whether you're having bowel changes, whatever, so that you can help identify if there's some sort of connection between your intake and your symptoms.
Yeah, great idea. Great idea. And obviously, I gave the example of changing to organic, but that took me a while to find an organic that didn't taste like yuck. And even different coffee shops, because I might have loved the caffeinated coffee at one coffee shop, but their decaf sucked. And I'd have a conversation with them about it as well. Oh, so what brand are you using? And I really don't like it. And they know that I'm there often. Some of them actually got different decaf beans just to see if I would like them. I'm such a regular. Herbal teas is another great one as well.
Look,
Um,
even stock standard black tea, and as I said, green tea is higher in caffeine than black tea, but it's still lower than coffee, but it does have other things in it as well, as I said before. You don't need to go from caffeine to no caffeine, from herbal to, normal to herbal. Play around with it a bit. Because, it may well be that a cup of tea in the afternoon does you just as well, but doesn't keep you awake at night. Yeah, so it's so personalized. Just play around with what you like. I would stay away though, if possible, stay away from the caffeinated colas and things like that, because for lots of different reasons, those sorts of drinks have an even greater effect on perimenopausal health in general, not just hot flashes, but they will exacerbate hot flashes more than a cup of coffee.
okay, great. So other things that we find caffeine in, we've mentioned the teas, we've mentioned obviously the coffees, we've mentioned the caffeine loaded drinks and supplements.
Chocolate coated coffee beans.
Chocolate coated coffee beans. They sound delicious, but no. So obviously chocolate has it in it. Anything else that we might not realize has caffeine in it if we're really going to clean up our system?
As far as food and drink sources that we know come in nature, I think we've probably got most of them covered. Correct me if you can think of other examples. There's a lot of added caffeine and, guarana and, things that excite our body added to foods as well. You can get chocolate bars that have caffeine in them, which makes it even worse. Some soft drinks that you wouldn't think have caffeine in them have caffeine in them, like lemonade type ones, as
Really?
opposed to colas.
The
Yeah,
children might be drinking it and the parents aren't aware that they're giving their kids the exciting
correct,
drug.
correct. Yes, some of the very big name brands have caffeine in them.
And it would be written on the label on the can?
Uh, well, yeah, it'll be written on the can, but if you go through a drive-through fast food chain that does slushies in that particular color, you'll get it without those instructions.
Right.
So you've just got to be a little bit suspect.
Yeah, a bit discerning, a bit aware, and make some choices.
I mean, it may well be worthwhile. I mean, if you think this is an issue for you and an issue for your family, even Google what processed foods or what soft drinks have caffeine in them, and it'll give you a big list.
Yeah,
And then
right.
you just pick your favorite brands and know not to have them.
And for me, I don't have a lot of colors, preservatives, artificial anything. So, and I don't have any of the soft drinks, and I don't do any of the other things. So, really, my sources are pretty clear, which
Yep.
is the coffee, which I've taken out, and then dark chocolate. So, I'm definitely not avoiding the dark chocolate. That's my caffeine
Once
delivery
again,
choice.
it's about not sweating the small stuff, because caffeine has polyphenols in it, which help mitigate it a little bit too. They have some magnesium, helps mitigate it a bit too. Realistically, in nature, and you might say that chocolate's not a natural food, but it kind of is when it's in that high dark chocolate formula. Nature balances things and puts things in pretty well. It's just when we corrupt these these processes that we come into trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Like raw, dark chocolate, homemade stuff is phenomenally health beneficial. And particularly when you mix it with the right cacao butter, the cacao fat, it's really, really good for the system and doesn't have any of the negative side effects. Obviously, you still have
Yep.
to, you don't have a kilo of it for breakfast. Let's talk
You
about,
couldn't have a kilo of it for breakfast, though.
you
I
couldn't
mean, you can only have 1 or 2 squares. That's what makes it different from a block of Cadbury Dairy Milk,
I know, right? I can sit there and eat an entire block of Cadbury. Rum and raisin is one of my faves, and not realize it by the end of the movie that I've just eaten an entire family block. But I can have like 2 days of the dark stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm done. I'm done.
Yep, correct.
Okay, so hydration, we covered that a little bit.
Yep,
Talked about
yep.
making sure that you're consuming more water. Do it first thing in the morning when you wake up. Soups, stews, veggies, fruits, get that beautiful water source into the body. A balanced diet, we've talked about some of the dietary suggestions and choices there. Exercise, any specific exercise that you would recommend for a perimenopausal, menopausal woman, or that might help
Yeah.
get rid of the caffeine out of the system faster?
Not specifically not specifically the caffeine, but of course it all has a holistic effect, but just in mitigating hot flashes and anything perimenopausal. I'll just briefly go back to diet and say the majority of women that I see are not eating enough.
Mm.
And that has a bearing on your resilience to stress. You need, in particular, enough protein and good fats. Now, in nature, protein comes with good fats. If you're eating whole foods, for example, eggs or nuts, they're protein, but they have fats with them. They reduce those likelihoods of those energy crashes and cravings, apart from anything else, but it also gives your body the actual fuel. Proteins are the fuel that our body uses to make energy, to actually drive our system. As far as exercise goes, once again, that's very nuanced, and that has to do with genetics as well as how fit you are when you come into perimenopause and all that sort of thing. What we want to do is not to cause too much stress on the body. So it may not be appropriate for someone to go out and run, for instance, because they want to get fit. As a general thing for most people, anything that's stress relieving, practices like mindfulness, but yoga and breathing, all the breathing things that are around at the minute really help lower that cortisol. And during perimenopause, cortisol is the thing. it really is the thing that we've all got to be looking at. And that obviously feeds back, because that's the whole stress hormone thing. So we want to lower that as much, which reduces the body's reactivity and its sensitivity to caffeine as well. So it's a double whammy. So if you can do that, and probably one of the biggest things that we need to look at with respect to an additional lifestyle thing is sleep. Good sleep totally increases your resilience to stress and to your stimulants. So if you want to drink more coffee, you need to get good sleep, which means you need to time your coffee properly, basically. If you're sensitive to caffeine and you know that, and you don't want to give it up, you really have to limit it to the morning hours significantly, because sleep is probably one of the most important things. I was going to say the most important thing, but let's not put it too much in a box, but it's very, very important for so many other reasons that if you tune in over the next 6 weeks, you will learn about.
We're going to do a deep dive into the sleep issues. It's definitely had a compounding effect on my overall resilience and anxiety levels. So I am non-negotiable on some of my sleep hygiene rules, which can make it difficult if you're sharing your sleep environment with another person. You really need to have some good conversations with them around, what is the compounding impact of you not getting quality sleep as you go through this transition phase. So we'll be talking about that a fair bit in upcoming webinar as well. So I want to talk about upcoming events. Before I get into the list of what's coming up, Rochelle, can you talk a little bit about Thrive Her, your new program and your new community, this whole new movement, I guess, that you've created?
Yeah, look, Thrive Her is a real passion for me. It's based around 3 principles, I guess. Firstly, a principle that I learned, which took me from my immunological studies, I was doing research, and took me from that medical field into naturopathy, was the fact that, largely ignored back then, if you give your body everything that it needs, it will not only heal, it will survive, but it will thrive.
Love it.
The other thing that all my Thrive Her stuff is based on is that small changes, smart small changes, can snowball into huge effects. And thirdly, that wellness is more than the absence of symptoms.
Yeah.
And I want to get people past their medical/health issues into that, they've healed, they're surviving now. Then I want them to be totally unrealistic and dream about what their perfect life is. And we will find the steps to work backwards to actually get you to your dream life. Because perimenopause is the time that our life changes, whether it's because our children are growing up and they move out, or we've come to get to a comfortable stage in our professions or whatever. We need to stress ourselves a little bit and dream bigger and really achieve. So my community in Thrive Her is about supporting women to make those big changes.
I love it. I love it. And I know that you've got some exciting people joining you in that team as well to support the community. So I'm looking forward to more updates and more evolution of that business. So the upcoming topics that we have, we've already mentioned one of them, which is sleep. We're going to be talking about sleep hacks for menopause, quick wins for restful nights. And of course, we're going to go into some of the background and the science behind why sleep is so important for perimenopausal and menopausal women. We're doing a whole one on hormone health essentials, foods that make a difference. I wonder if caffeine will feature in there. Stress busters, fast acting tools for menopause anxiety, one of my favorite topics. Weight gain in menopause, why it happens and what to do about it. And brain fog fixes, staying sharp through menopause. So if any of those interest you or interest if you know that they can be of interest or help to a woman or a man that you know, then please pass on the links so they can register and get the recording if they can't attend live, or to please come and attend live. And of course, wherever you're viewing this video at the moment is a great place for you to see the upcoming episodes as they're released. And they will be available as well on the podcast Hot and Healthy Menopause, where you get all of your podcast, all the platforms, you can find it there. So thanks very much for tuning in. Thank you, Rochelle, so much for sharing. I'm looking forward to spending a few more nights with you talking about our favorite topic. And in the meantime, everyone, remember to be hot and healthy. Bye for now.
Bye.
Stop recording and find the button. Da-da-da. Where's the button?
Down the bottom.
Up the top.